Welcome back to the two-part series where last week I played 30 minutes of 200L Russian cash playing pure attempted GTO strategy, and in today's episode I'm going to be playing pure exploit poker for the 30 minutes to answer the question, what works best at 200L Russian cash, GTO or exploitive poker? So guys, welcome back to episode 2. In this episode we're going to be playing pure exploit, as I said in the intro. Now I actually get to look at people's stats, look at people's stack sizes and play accordingly. Similar to last week's episode, I said that multiway is pretty difficult to play correctly, and this is no different, but what I do know is when I have a straight flush draw, I'm going to be raising my hand very, very often. 10-8 offsuit, we've opened the button, we've been called by two players. This is going to be one of those ones that I'm going to be mixing in theory as an open, but as played, I'm just going to be always opening it on the button, and I'm going to be opening 2/3 pot. The 8-7, we do get it through, and the 10-8, they do fold as well. So very differently to the last episode, where I was just playing as close to theory as possible, I got to say that this is much more my kind of bread and butter in the way that I play. Obviously, like, I'm using theory to some extent to underpin my strategy. This 10-6 is very close to an open, but I think with these two players seemingly not just giving it away in folding style, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious with my opening range with 10-6 suited there. Ace-Jack offsuit, definitely just a fold versus under the gun. Both in theory and in reality. 9-5 suited here, depending on timing and sizing, I'm probably going to check raise his hand a decent amount of the time. And I think exploitatively, this just makes a very good check raise always. I would rather have clubs here because you don't want to get overflushed by the times you hit hearts when they have like ace-x of hearts. But I think for the most part here, you can never call this combo. I'm just going to use it as a pure raise bucket. 5-4 of hearts, definitely just pure calling here and nothing else to do but flop a wheel, maybe, or trips. Trips is good. Who needs theory or exploit when you just flop trips? 5-3 offsuit, I'm just going to fold this one. I was thinking if it folded around to me. 5-4, just going to be pure calling. There are going to be raises in theory and in reality here from like your vulnerable pocket pairs. But I think when you have trips and like a complete stranglehold on the board, you just want to be checking. Turn is going to be half pot check. Do I think people are going to continue versus half pot or bluff off more often? I think betting, I think I'm going to go with the small sizing though. The reason I'm going for the small sizing here is because there was a quick check on the turn which tells us their hand is middling to weak, and they do snap call. So when they snap call, this is going to be ace high and pocket eights, like pretty much nothing in between. I mean, it might be nines, tens, or jacks as well, because this is quite a nitty pool, but those hands probably should have just bet the turn. So I'm going with a small sizing because I think their range is a bit too middling. But if I thought their timing was a bit stronger, then perhaps I would have gone with a half pot on the turn. We do see the snap fold, which kind of checks out. Maybe a good alternative here for me, and a reminder to you, is to potentially go with the 40% sizing. It kind of does two things. First and foremost, it doesn't look as big as 50 because it's not as big as 50, but it also looks small enough that kind of people are more incentivized to continue with ace high. That kind of works in theory world as well, right? Because obviously the smaller you bet, the wider you got to defend. But also that means that pot will be a bit bigger on the river and then our shove will be a bit smaller. So even if you went like 35% on the turn or something like that, like this really nice middle ground where you force them into continuing a bit more and then feeling a bit more overcommitted could be a good approach. That said, the timing did tell us that the hand was very middling, so going small probably is okay as well. But I'm just trying to share like the nuance of like the way in which you can manipulate situations in your favor. Defending the ace-7 suited, in fact, you know what? What's this 3 percentage? Why is this not working? 11%. I'm actually going to chuck this into a bucket and this is going to be a 4-bet and I'm going to make it $30. The small 3-bet size is just weak. And I think it's fair to say that it can't possibly be very strong on average, in my opinion. But it's fairly easy when you flop a nut flush draw. And I'm going to go with a range bet for 27% pot. Could scroll up or down here to slightly bigger or slightly smaller, but I think this does exactly what I'm trying to do with it. Depending on timing and sizing now, I do turn a flush. I was going to say I'd be shoving a lot of turns. Obviously, we're not shoving this turn. I think I think checking here would be a monumental mistake. So I'm going to go with a slightly small sizing. Unblocking the king is really important here, but also forcing them to call hands like queen jack still, maybe even an ace queen ace jack. Because of the brown tag, we don't really expect to get money from their like ace jack and ace queen on the turn on or the river via bluffing. So I'm just going to bet the 8-7 always here. I'm going to bet a blind and I'm going to shove the a7. I think checking again would be a huge mistake here versus what seems to be a fairly passive player. You just want to make sure that you're putting in money when you have good hands when you're unblocking the calls. 8-7 of clubs here. I'm going to go with a very small bet on the turn, and this is super, super exploitative. I'm going with a small bet on the turn to set up a river shove depending on timing and sizing, and we do face a snap raise on the turn, so I'm just going to be folding my hand now. This might look like a bit of a torch, but trust me, this is an extremely profitable play and something you want to really begin to incorporate into your game if you don't already. Ace-4, nitty player, going to 3-bet this one always. 6-3, like if these were tighter players, we'll be opening this one up. They seem both competent, to say the least, so I'm going to not be super, super loose with my opening there. Do get cold called by Ficho from the last hand. These monotone boards are not great for us multi-way, and I'm going to be playing with great passivity here with my range, and Ace-4 of hearts is no different. Ace-King going to be squeezing this one up. Going to make this 14 blinds. I would ordinarily make this like 12.5, but because we're many way, I'm going to go with the bigger sizing and size up to 14. Ace-4 here versus the 40% bet. Even though it may be tempting to call here, we're just super, super dominated by so much of their cold call range. And we do get a good price, but I don't think we ever have the best hand. And also, we don't necessarily get paid when we hit. And also, when we hit an ace, it could easily be a spade and we could still lose to a 10 anyway. So bad things happen if you continue here. As a general rule of thumb, this kind of goes for the theory stuff as well, but like definitely for exploit for sure, is that you really want to try and be the aggressor as often as possible and not be the guy that's calling down versus people or a population that tends to err on the side of passivity. So when people start blasting money into you, you want to be folding mixes as much as possible. That's both pre-flop and actually pre-flop not so much because you can realize your equity in other ways. So pre-flop you probably still want to be playing pretty pure, but like when you're facing like two barrels and stuff, I'm just going to call the 6-3 of clubs here. The very quick half pot on the flop gives me a bit of concern here. There are definitely going to be some donks here, but I don't think this is the kind of player we want to be donking against because of the quick bet on the flop, telling us that they probably have an ace a little bit more than they should on average. Ace-5 of diamonds here versus the min bet. I'm just going to call. Kind of unideal, but we get 8-1, so I don't really see how we can fold this hand, even with another player involved. The 6-3 here, I think overbetting is the traditional sizing. However, I'm going to go just under pot, and the reason I'm doing this is because I think their range is pretty weak now that they've checked the turn. And I'm trying to get a crying call from like some kind of weak ace, although now I don't really think they have an ace, mainly like a 10 or maybe like a river jack or something like that. I think if you overbet here, you just make them fold way too much. So I really want to just go for the sizing that I can get a bit more hero calls. I mean, I kind of got lucky that they rivered a jack, to be honest with you, and my read on the flop was a bit wrong, so I will own up to that one. Ace-5 versus the min bet, we probably have a tiny bit of showdown versus like under pairs and maybe a king jack or a given up flush draw. So yeah, I just check this one back. So yeah, what was I saying? I can't remember what I was saying now about the other, one second. Right, I'm going to 3-bet the pocket 8s up. I'm going to 3-bet this a bit bigger because we're a bit deeper. 3-bet ace king. And this is the player that just led out, gave up. Okay, we've been cold jammed. Jesus Christ. I think with the extra $16 dead money here and the fact that this player has only played 33 hands, although I've got to tell you now, this is like super unideal. This may be a fold, but it's not even 100 big blinds. And also we've got the extra $20 of dead money. So I'm going to run it. But genuinely, I'm not going to be surprised if this is kings or aces. King 9, we're going to be check calling on the king 5-3. Yeah, this is like a very, very classic hand for Russian cash, I would say. That like when people, oh, that was what I was saying. I now remember. You don't want to be continuing versus aggression. And this is a prime example of that. So even though we have ace king and we've got all this dead money in there and price is pretty good, when you get a cold 4-bet jam for this many blinds, 4-way, you're doing not very well with like what would be classed as fist pump get-ins. I'm going to overbet the king 9 here. I could go with a very big sizing here, but I think with a very quick turn check on the ace suggests to me that they don't have that many aces, so they're going to really struggle to dip into calls. You may then say we want to get 2/3 pot, and I wouldn't argue with that, and maybe $15 is a bit better. It probably is, if I'm honest with you. But I was kind of talking about the ace king, so I wasn't fully thinking about the spot. Hopefully we do get called. Pocket sixes here versus the 2/3 pot. We just call now. Versus small sizing, we would have played like a decent amount of check raise. Sixes versus this size. Probably raises a sliver, but I think in this pool versus what seems to be another nitty player, we're just going to proceed with call. So yeah, like the continued aggression pre-flop is kind of similar to the continued aggression post-flop, is that you just got to get the hell out of there a lot of the time. Pocket sixes here, you could make a really, really good fold on the turn here, but I am just going to call because I don't know the player and the sample is not big enough. But I think versus a lot of players in this pool, you can already fold sixes with a club on the turn, which is kind of absurd because they're probably betting this turn like 70% of the time in theory. But yeah, I think it's the right play. Queen 10 checks out massively. But yeah, what would you guys do there? Would you fold sixes on the turn? Pocket fours here, we've opened, we've been called. Flops king, queen, 5. I'm actually going to use this one as a small bet into a river bluff. We have showdown here, but he also has many middle in pocket pairs. Do face the min raise on the turn. I'm not a huge believer of this, I'm not going to lie to you. We do block a 5 as well. I know we're saying we shouldn't be attacking aggression, but this is like weak aggression. It's a min raise. So I'm actually going to 3-bet this one into river shove. I think with a very quick call here, this is very rarely going to be a flush. And it might be a 5, but more likely it's just going to be a naked king. So I am going to shove here for 3 times pot. Yeah, but I think this is a very, very good shove in this exact situation, given the timing and the sizing from the player. Ace 10 here, we're going to be mostly betting, mainly because the button is a recreational here. So I'm going to do it this time. I'm not sure rate too high. I think that they're a streamer. And probably just has a pretty weak range at this point. Pocket fours is pretty dicey at this point. They're tanking, which suggests to me that they may have a 5 now, but when they raise turns so small, it's just so incredibly unlikely that they have a good hand. And they 2-fold aces. Wow. So they've cold called aces and then min raise turn. So I guess aces is kind of the same as a 5 here. The reason I say that is because it has okay visibility in terms of like, it is going to be the best hand some of the time, but the board is also going to bring 4 flush a lot of the time. So it's kind of like that they're raising to see where they're at, give themselves maybe an opportunity to check back the river if like a scary card comes, or to be honest with you, if any card comes, I reckon they're going to check aces there. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with my read and to attack the timing and the sizing there. Ace 10 here versus rate too high. I actually have seen a couple of hands from this player. I'm going to value bet the river, but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if this is a check versus this player. I'm kind of have seen some hands that they've like checked back. Going to bet the Queen 8 versus type players that they've checked back some like 2 pairs and played like some 2 pairs very, very passively. So this is kind of thin, I would think. But I mean, in theory, it's going to be probably a relatively clear value bet. Face the quick raise on the 5-5-4. Definitely just going to be folding this hand. Nothing else to do here. There's no exploit to be had here, I don't think, versus their line with my hand. Yeah, that pocket fours hand is super interesting because I could just look like an idiot there because they could just have, I don't know, ace 10 of hearts. But do you think that they would min raise turn with ace high flush? Maybe. Do you think they would fold a 5 versus 3-pot shove? I think they would. So I'm okay with it. King 10 here versus what seems to be... King 10 versus what seems to be a reg. Overbet, I think we just fold now versus the overbet. Need like a backdoor flush draw or a better straight draw. King 7, I'm going to start bluffing here. I'm going to go half pot on the turn. This is super out of line, but I think is a good spot to bluff. Spade coming in the river is really unideal, but I'm mainly targeting like pairs and straight draws here. Combos like 9-8, combos like 10, Queen 10, 10-9, Jack 9. So I'm just going to go with the pot sizing. Obviously, we get like fisted by a flush here, and that's okay. But we are just going to make them fold like a bunch of one pair combos, and that's all we're trying to achieve here. Betting the turn here is like super illegal, but the small blind checks super quickly. Under the gun checks super quickly on the flop. So I think we can, let's just say, widen up our fighting range there. But yeah, it's kind of not allowed, I would say. That's not really like a hand that, like most of the things that I'm doing, I would say I would advise that you do. That one I probably would not advise you do, if we're being truly honest here. Jack 8, very tight player. I think when you have a super tight player like this, this can be good hands as well. So I would never want to ISO the Jack 8. Interesting spot now. Do I want to just start leading out myself? I think I do. They're passive. They probably have a lot of pocket pairs. I've just established that quite a lot of their range is going to be good hands because they don't have an opening range. Their opening range is 8. So when they retain like a bunch of pairs that now won't fold, I think I just want to start building the pot myself and just like when they call, just assume that they're going to call down so much and just completely set my price and value town the hell out of them. 5-3 off. This player's not quite tight enough for me to want to open this one. I mean, they are disgustingly tight still, but yeah, I'm just going to go with the fold. Picking up aces for the first time in 2 videos. Or should I say 200 hands. 9-8 suited. We got some, let's just say, weaker players in the blinds. Picking up aces for the second time back to back. Going to 3-bet this one up. We're deeper again, so I'm going to bet this one 9 blinds. 9-8. What hands are we going to be choosing as a bluff here? Some of our very low pairs, and then maybe some of our broadways. I think 9-8 hearts is a little bit too low equity, even exploitatively, to start piling money in. So I'm going to check. They did very quickly check the flop, which is interesting. And now they're betting the turn and very clear fold, I think. Don't want to get too out of line in this spot particularly. I think they do have a lot of good hands still. Aces, I'm just going to absolutely bomb the flop here. The reason is that the button has cold called and their brown tag is like tight fish. So when tight fish cold calls, their range is going to be mostly pocket 9s through pocket jacks and queens, and then some ace queen and ace jack. Obviously, like we block the ace queen and ace jack, so they should just be more pocket pair heavy. Clearly, this is like unbelievable greed from me, but I don't give people enough credit to get away from those really premium overpairs, even though they probably should, for me not to start piling in money. Maybe I want to go half pot. Maybe I want to go 60% pot. That could be a better approach, but I think just putting in a lot of money is a good shout there. So Jack 3 offsuit, if this folded round to me, we've got the big blind who's a 42-25. I think I would fold this one. You just need the recreational to be a bit more tight and a bit more passive to start doing it. Exhibit A, 19-17, so we're going to pure open this one. Player's a bit too active in the blinds here to open King 5 offsuit, so we're not going to do that. Pocket 7s, probably going to cold call if they open, but now open. Big up troll bag, legend of the 200 Russian cash street, and for the sake of the video, we're going to 3-bet him once. King 5 suited here versus tight player. Going to just fold this one. I think it's a little bit too wide. I think we can go King 8 here if we wanted to. 5 doesn't do a great deal for us. We want to have a little bit more kind of like going on to bluff 3-bet. And then ace-10 suited, pure 3-betting versus stable genius. Played a decent amount with this player. Have a very good sense of the way that they play. Going to side up even more, actually, make it 26. And 3-betting the kings versus under the gun open here. Ace-Jack deuce. I think if this is button versus under the gun, you play a lot of checks, which is kind of unintuitive. But I think in this exact configuration, I just have the absolute wealth of ace-X here. because I'm 3-betting super kind of like ace queen plus heavy and far fewer of the low suited connectors. Whereas like on the button, I have like pocket 7s and pocket 8s and even pocket 6s and more 5-4 suited, etc. So you don't do as well when you 3-bet the button as when you do in MP. Pure check the turn, nothing else to do here. They very quickly check the turn as well. Is my hand worth a value bet? My worry is in this pool is that people don't value bet enough, and I think that's a very fair assessment from me. I have played this pool a little bit now. I have looked at a million hands from this pool from different players. It's going to be a value bet in theory, but I am going to check because I just don't expect to get called from like the Jack X region and the Pocket Queens region here enough. And I still do think that they will just have too much Ace X. You might say this is way too nitty, but I just think this is correct in a pool like this. Pocket 9s, well, we don't get any information here. They certainly don't call a river bet, but also like we don't know if they would have checked an ace. So yeah, this is probably kind of a little bit on the nitty side. Or should I say, let me rephrase that. I think my equity is really good there, generally speaking, but I don't think in reality it yields the same equity as my hand is worth in theory. So I think that it just becomes a little bit unattractive. 8-7 fold. 4 deuce suit, I'm going to open. We've got this player here who played the 6-3 of hearts hand, where they just gave up. I'm just going to start piling money into this pot and bet 2/3 pot. The goal here is to just like build the pot for when I hit my hand. Sounds really fishy, but it's a legitimate strategy. I'm going to 3-bet this one to 11, we're a bit deeper. Turn here, I'm actually going to blast the turn as well. The goal here is to make them fold some better hands, whilst also getting them to call with some worse hands, some flush draws, for example, some straight draws, for example, and then also gives me the opportunity to blast the river if they check to us, depending on their timing and sizing, and also check back for some EV as well. I think river now we just have a pretty mandatory raise. I don't want to go too big here. They're telling me that they have a middling strength hand, like a 2-pair or something like that. Maybe like a 9-7 of clubs or something like that. And I don't necessarily think that they're going to call a huge raise. The other thing to mention is that they can still have flushes here, and I don't want to completely power own myself versus that range as well. We do get jammed on after they bet half pot. This is very sad. I think this is just a fold. We get our value here by raising. We make them call worse hands. A recreational player who already played another hand very, very passively is now telling us that a 4 high flush is not going to be good. Basically telling us that like I'm either shoving a bluff or I'm shoving a very, very good flush. And I tend to believe the sizing, and I tend to believe the timing on the river for the 3-bet jam. We also have the lowest flush, so we can't beat any flushes. And I think the hand is just very, very standard and well played. Maybe we could have checked somewhere, but when we do face the all-in, we need to make a very disciplined fold there, in my opinion. Queen 10 offsuit here, we're going to be using big bets and checks, and we're going to be pure checking this one, and pure calling the king-queen, and going to a flop. Queen 10, we're just going to be calling versus the min bet. And I think we have a chopped kicker here now. This player kind of looks fairly reggy. If I had ace 10, I would definitely value bet here, but I think with king 10, I'm not going to value bet. With queen 10, sorry, I'm not going to value bet. We could go with a very small sizing here, but like the stats suggest that we don't have a very concrete exploit here to go with that sizing. So until I have reason to believe otherwise, and actually they bet him in blind, and actually they bet 1 blind on the turn there with pocket 4s in a hyperpolarized spot. So definitely they're not a reg, but without the read and looking at their stats, I think that the check back is probably the correct play there. Queens here, we're going to check to our good friend on the button who's just owned us with hopefully a better flush. I'm going to go to value turn now, and I'm going to bet half pot on the turn. Ace-Jack here is interesting. Going to call the Ace-Jack off with this presumed big recreation on the small blind. This is definitely not a call in theory and a little bit too wide, but I'm okay with it. Flop, I think I'm going to use this as a check back, and I'm going to prioritize more of my ace queen. Small blind definitely does have some sixes here. My hand isn't worth 3 streets, even though I definitely have the strongest range out of all the 3 players here, I think. King 9 off. I think I'm going to fold here. It's got really bad reverse implied odds. Ace jack, I'm just going to call the turn here. I don't think raising accomplishes anything here. I think we isolate the range too much here, basically meaning that we narrow their range to bet our hands a bit too much, and it gives us more information when we call, and now we just have a really clear river raise. In terms of sizing, what are we trying to get called by here? We're trying to get called by an ace. Both players basically almost definitely have an ace only, and also I don't think either player has a 6. And because we have the jack as well, we block the board so heavily. I'm not going to make it too big. I'm going to make it this kind of like 10x raise and just try and get a hero call from a chop. What they think is a chop, sorry. I have, in their eyes, I rep so weirdly here. I guess they could perceive me to have like ace jack only, probably. I never really have a 6. I can't have jacks. I guess I could have jacks, but I would raise the turn. I'm blocking the ace. So yeah, on king 5, I'm going to open with very tight players in the blinds. Maybe I could go even smaller here with the ace jack and like really, really try and force them into defending an ace more of the time. Opening up the pocket 3s here, getting called out the small blind. This is a board that we're probably going to be doing mostly checking on, but I'm going to go with the small sizing. Trying to get a bit of information here and also have some potentially devious plans. We've been open from a very tight player on the button. I'm going to 3-bet the queen jack offsuit. Pocket 3s here. I'm going to bet again, and I'm going to go with a small sizing. And then river, I'm just going to pure bluff. Absolutely fantastic combo to bluff the river. Obviously a terrible combo to bet the flop and turn, but it's a beautiful combo to bet the river with. I'm just going to go with a very small overbet. 3-3 for 3-3. Goal here is to make them fold a bunch of jack X's and then obviously loads of their flush draws. Do get called. Called by 10s. Wow, okay. So fair play. Maybe they knew exactly what I was up to and exploiting that fact. I think that this is going to do very well on average on this river. Turn is probably not allowed, or definitely not allowed. But I think my sizing and what I'm trying to achieve is good, and particularly, and well, the opposite. Not the fact that I've been called by pocket 10s is obviously really, really bad for us, but also we have made them call a hand like pocket 10s on the turn, which is going to be in such a difficult spot on so many rivers, and many more rivers apart from this one. I'm going to be using a much bigger sizing as well, so they get forced into a pretty miserable corner much more often in this exact node. A7 just a pure call versus half pot, and 10-9 we're just going to be pure continuing. We did get 4-bet with the queen jack offsuit. I don't know if I said that, but we obviously did fold. And I'm going to make these the last few hands. Jack on the river, pretty bad, but we do see a check. I think I'm going to go all in here. And the goal of this is I have more queens than they do, and also we can make them fold a 7, which is a very good result as well. So it's kind of like one of those that's like, you might see it as being unnecessary because you win enough, but also like you just win the pot like always when they check the river here and they never have a queen. So you're just really screwing them. It's really difficult for people to find the discipline to bet turn with like a hand like queen jack for this sizing, and then to not follow through on the river with the expectation that we're going to be checking back a load of 1 pairs and 2 pairs. So that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This was very different to the last video. If you haven't checked it out already, definitely go do that. Let me know what you thought about my play. Was I playing too exploitatively? Was my fold with the 4 deuce of hearts okay? Was my bluff with the pocket 3s way out of line? Probably was way out of line, but definitely let me know what you thought about it. But that's going to do it for today, guys. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, take care, and I will see you at the tables.